Everybody was watching. Today, they get paid millions of dollars to play in the arenas. While they're destroying our people, they don't pay attention. We are still the gladiators, the greatest athletes. We were fighting wild bulls and animals. You only pay with your life. They did that to our Christians. They tossed them in there. And the crowd will go furious. Amazing. Continue to read.
Unfortunately,
historical
records are so sketchy that it is difficult to make even a reliable estimate of the total number killed during the persecutions, though recent scholarships has cast doubt on earlier traditions.
That's a lie. That's actually a lie. We have information on this. They've been hiding it. Go ahead.
Earlier traditions that huge numbers, even millions, were martyred. In any event, the true significance of the early martyrs lies not in their numbers, but in the impacts of their courage on countless others.
See, they don't do justice. They don't do justice to the truth. Let's read Revelation chapter 1, verse 1, please. Because, in fact, before we do that, read the book of Revelation, the history of the book of Revelation. Read from here when this book was written. Let's read it. This book
was written at the time when the church was...
When the what?
When the church.
The church, we know who the church is, the nation of Israel that has the truth. Come on.
Was undergoing persecution and difficulty. The two most important such period were the reign of Nero, AD 37 to 68.
Nero, AD 37 to what?
68.
To 68.
And Domitian.
And Domitian.
In AD 51 to 96.
To 96, that first century was critical. The gospel that came out of Jerusalem to come into Rome, they were killing our people like their pappage seed. Come on.
Revelation was addressed to the churches of Asia Minor, which were mentioned in chapters 2 and 3.
Christ was revealing to the Israelites scattered over there how the consummation will come to keep comfort and know what's ahead of them before our rulership comes. That's why he came to reveal that to John. And guess what? John, Yakanenu, the Revelator, our brother, was also being prosecuted with Peter, Paul, and James by the same Roman government. Let's read right there, book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 9.
Verse 9 says, I, John, who also am your brother,
and
companion, in tribulation.
In what?
In tribulation.
In what?
In tribulation.
Yakanenu, a black Jew, a so-called Christian, the brother of Zebedee, Zebedee, the brother of James, Jacob, was also going through tribulation with the rest of our people. They know our struggle. In the hand of the Roman powers. I, Yachanan, who also am your brethren, letting you know that is an Israelite, a Judah, a companion in tribulation, suffering with us, in the hand of the same Roman at the same time of Nero, Domitian. Come on.
And in the kingdom and patience.
And in the what?
Kingdom
in
and
the
patience.
Government, because it's about rulership. And patiently waiting for what?
Of Yahshua Mashiach.
Waiting for our Savior to bring our rulership. Come on.
Was in the isles that is called Patmos for the word of Elohim and for the testimony of Yahshua Mashiach.
Come on.
I was in the spirit on the Lord's day and heard behind me a voice as of a trumpet saying, I am Alpha and Omega.
I am what?
Alpha and Omega.
What language was he speaking to him in? Hebrew. Yachanan spoke Hebrew. He was born in Jerusalem. Just like when our Savior spoke to Paul, he revealed himself, he was speaking to him in Hebrew. And it was documented in Greek and translated into English. I am A and the To. He was speaking ancient Hebrew dialect to him, our language. The beginning and the end. Ato. Come on.
The first and the last. And what thou seest, write in a book, and send it unto the 7 churches which are in Asia.
In Asia,
unto Ephesus,
Ephesus,
unto Smyrna,
Smyrna,
and unto Pergamos,
Pergamos,
and unto
Thyatira,
Thyatira, and unto Sardis, and unto the Philadelphia, and unto Laodicea.
As you can see, our Savior gave information to those churches that were controlled by our people. They know what was at stake. Today, the Christians have no clue. The Jesuit has put a number on them. This was not the doctrine that are being preached today, that the disciples, the first century Christians, Jews, that was fighting against the status quo at the time, was delivered. That made them shake up Rome. As you can see, John tells you he was going through persecution. I'm with you in tribulation. He was put in that island by the Romans too, where he received the word. The rest of them has been murdered. Peter was already killed. Paul was already killed. The pillaging has already been going on. The gospel to the nation of Israel, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, has been infiltrated. No one talks about who we are anymore. They've given us a new name, Christian, to hide who we are. The Christian religion is the belief in our Savior of the Israelites. It was about the government that is bringing for righteous Israelite that keeps his commandment, and the Gentiles that will embrace this righteousness. And here's what's going to happen. Pick it up from right here. The bloodletting.
The bloodletting was stopped in 261 by an edict granted equal toleration to all religion. During the next 4 decades, Christian communities appeared as far as Britain into the northwest and beyond the empire's eastern boundary in Mesopotamia. This respite, however, was brought to a sudden end in 303.
So the spreading of this gospel was brought to a sudden end. I mean, look at that geography. So during the next 4 years, 4 decades, Christian community, as we know, people that begin to embrace our Savior, both Jews and Gentiles as well, spread as far as Britain in the northwest beyond the empire's eastern boundaries toward Mesopotamia, which is Iraq. This respite, however, was brought to sudden end in 303 AD, 330 years after the death of our Savior. What happened? When the Emperor Diocletian
launched what was to be the last and the most violent attempt to rid the empire of Christianity. A former army officer, Diocletian had taken far-reaching steps to restore order to the empire since coming to power in 284. His most radical move was to divide the sprawling realm in two, delegating control of the western portion to a co-emperor, Maximian. At first, Diocletian was tolerant of Christianity, whose following may have included his own wife and daughter. But increasingly, he came to view the faith as a threat to his authority. In 303, Diocletian issued a series of decrees ordering, among other things, the destruction of all church buildings and the imprisonment, exile, and execution of those who refuses to make sacrifice to the imperial gods.
So they know it was a threat to the gods of the Romans. We're going to execute, imprison. See there? So after the book of Revelation, with Yakimen, it continues, the persecution continued. The campaign inflicted terrible suffering on Christian community in many parts of the empire, but in the end it was doomed to failure. The sheer number of Christians made such an undertaking difficult and costly, and a widespread sympathy for the victims led more and more local officials to to moderate their attempts to enforce the prosecution. Continue.
Both Diocletian and Maximian abdicated in 305, plunging the divided empire into disorder. In 306, the young army commander Constantine was proclaimed emperor of the West by his troops. But 6 years passed before he took undisputed possession of that title by invading Italy and defeating his principal rival.
So conflict within Rome themselves, because Constantine had to actually rival against the successor of Domitian and Maximian. So here comes Constantine. Watch what Constantine is going to do, and this is a critical moment now for what Constantine will do. Read it.
Maxitus at the historic battle of Milvian Bridge. It was there, according to a tradition, that Constantine saw a fiery cross in the sky, an omen of victory that convinced him of the truth and power of Christianity. Not yet.
Now, a pagan, Constantine, will be convinced of Christianity. He saw a cross. And as you know, this is going to be leading to Byzantium, where people worship every religious relic, worshiping so-called people, sculptures of people called saints. And they were all black, by the way. People worship black image of Christians. Like Paul, in this book, shows you Peter as black. And they will worship, which is against the law. Because again, it was our people that brought this Christianity, the truth, that would also be, as we know, be tainted by Constantine himself. Let me see if I can show you the image of Peter himself. Continue to read though, while I get the image of Peter. Actually, I have the image of Peter. This is, you see the one with the key right here? This is Peter. When the Most High said, Christ, I'm going to give you the key of the kingdom. He is the head of the Church of Rome. They call him St. Peter. Being painted as a black man, St. Peter. You see him there? In the Church of Rome. This is called center left, the arms of Aragon, Spain, center right, the arms of Karamersburg, Austria, St. Peter's foremost saint and the founder of the Catholic Church is shown as jet black Negro. He tells you that right here at the caption, that St. Peter is depicted as a jet black Negro because, like we told you, he's Niger. These are the people that had the doctrine that they're going to change. Starting from the time of Constantine, it already started from the diaspora. When the 12 disciples were killed off, they changed the gospel quickly. It was not the same. So all these other church leaders that you're hearing that say this and say that, they're not telling the true gospel. When Peter and them left and were killed, it opened the way from that time, leading to this 300 AD, the time of the Constantine, to finally put his fingerprint on it, because they were perplexed with this gospel. Constantine will embrace it. Let's read it. Go ahead.
That Constantine saw a fiery cross in the sky, an omen of victory that convinced him of the truth and power of Christianity. Not yet a convert, Constantine nonetheless established himself as an active and generous patron of the church. In 313, he and his Eastern co-emperor Licinius proclaimed freedom for all religion and restored property that had been confiscated from the Christians. A series of other measures followed, providing generous financial support and permitting churches to preserve receive property, exempting Christians from participating in gladiatorial games and
gladiator, which is sports where they're tossing us in their coliseums. Go ahead.
Gladiatorial games and pagan sacrifices, designating Sunday a day of rest.
He designated Sunday what?
A day of rest.
We're going to read that in this book now. Here's Constantine. Come on.
Designating Sunday a day of rest and more, all bolstering the church's position. Constantine's support of Christianity, and of course, was not without practical benefits to him. Christians were not yet a majority of the emperor's population, but they were numerous, widely dispersed, and cohesive enough to provide a much-needed unifying force. This was especially so in Asia Minor.
This Christianity was not the brand of Christianity that Peter, Paul, and the disciples were teaching that established these churches that were being persecuted. This is the infiltration of the true doctrine. Yes, it was black people that established the Church of Rome through blood and much persecution, like the Bible.
And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carried her, which had the 7 heads and 10 horns.
And these beasts assimilated our Christian, Latinized it, completed destroying our people. We read the book, reading from the Bible. So the persecution of our people started at the Romans, the saints, and the martyrs. Now it was, amazingly enough, the persecution, the martyrdom of our people was happening at the same time our Savior was revealing it. Because that's when this book was written. But it's also speaking about the longevity of this 4th beast of Revelation and the horns, and how they're going to make an abomination of the earth. We're still reading Bible Atlas. Continue to round up. We're trying to round up here.
Say Constantine's support of Christianity, of course, was not without practical benefit to him. Christianity was not yet a majority of the empire's population, but they were numerous, widely dispersed, and cohesive enough to provide a much-needed unifying force. This was especially so in Asia Minor and other eastern areas, which had some of the oldest and most influential Christian communities.
So they knew that they can actually infiltrate this and shift it a whole different direction and use it to actually unify his government instead of galvanize it and polarize it. And they saw it as an opportunity. And it was deeper because when you understand the actions of the Jesuits, they were behind it. It's not going to be the same doctrine when you see a Roman emperor embracing it. Come on.
And which readily closed the ranks behind Constantine when he finally defeated Licinius and reunited the empire in 324. Fittingly, it was Constantine himself who convened a historic church council of the following year at the city of Nicaea in Bithynia. Some 300 bishops gathered there.
The first council, this is a book called titled The First Council of Nicaea. He's going to have a political move and pull all the so-called church leaders into one room where Roman emperor becomes a leader over them, not Israelites. Because as we saw in the beginning of this teaching, the Israelites are the ones that are going to be ruling over the Romans and the whole rest of the world. So when you see a Roman presiding over Christianity, Paul, Peter, and James are not going to be in this congregation right here. Listen to what's going to come out of this stuff. Read it.
Fittingly, it was Constantine himself who convened a historic church council of Nicaea, council the following year at the city of Nicaea in Bithynia. Some 300 bishops gathered there to deal with a stormy controversy over the nature of Christ's divinity that was threatening to splinter the church from within. After several weeks of debate, the council arrived at a resolution that would remain at the core of Christian doctrine. The declaration of faith known to later centuries as the Nicene Creed.
Now, we know what the Nicene Creed is, but let's see what came out of the Council of Nicaea. Actually, let me read this one myself. This is Constantine writing. And tell me if this is the same thing that the disciples believed. This is the epistle of emperor to those bishops who were not present. He's writing them what came out from the Council of Nicaea. Constantine Augustus to the churches. Viewing the common prosperity enjoyed at this moment as the result of great power of divine grace, I am desirous that the blessed member of the Catholic Church should be preserved in one faith, in sincere love, and in one form of religion towards the Almighty Allahayim. The Catholic Church that was actually put together by Jews that were going through, that paid with their blood, will be embraced now by Constantine, the Emperor of Rome. But because no firmer or more effective measure should be adopted to secure this end, that of submitting each holy mode of worship to the examination of all, who's going to examine? Or most of all, the bishop. I convened as many of them as possible and took my seat among them as one of yourselves, for I will not deny that trust which is the secure of the